Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. If Aaron Rodgers inevitably comes to the Minnesota Vikings, would fans embrace him like they did Brett Favre?
I'm Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. I would have a lot of tweets to delete.
Hi, this is Arif Hassan with Pro Football Network. None of my co-hosts have complimented my glasses.
Luke Inman on Twitter, at Luke_Spinman. Only 7.5 more weeks of mock drafts, guys. Hang in there, guys. We're almost there. We can do this.
Luke is the one. He always knows the number of days until the draft. It's kind of uncanny. He's got a paper chain. We're talking Vikings football, free agency, controversies, plenty more on the Minnesota Football Party.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Pro Football Network's Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talk's Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Welcome, welcome. It's the Minnesota Football Party. The full crew is here today. I'm Sam Ekstrom, joined by the Lukes and Arif Hassan, talking Minnesota Vikings football, maybe touching on Aaron Rodgers today as well, as the rumors get even heavier that he is headed to the Jets. I ask this question: is Kirk Cousins the second best Vikings quarterback of all time? Is he officially in that category? And what if Aaron Rodgers suited up for the Vikings down the road? Would fans embrace him? We'll also continue our free agency preview today with the Vikings talking about the safety position. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel.com. FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Make every moment more at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We are in breaking news like Schefter bomb territory. And if something happens, it might be Rodgers, it might be Lamar, it might be a Vikings cut, might be a Vikings contract. We are in the breaking news portion. Now, where did it go? I had it. I played it for you guys. My breaking news sound effect has disappeared. You know what? I bet it was in...
so proud.
It was in the Ron Johnson list. There it is.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So you get to switch to the Ron Johnson overlay to play it?
I put it in Ron Johnson. So if there is some breaking news, we will switch to Ron Johnson just so we can play the breaking news sound effect and notify you what is happening in the NFL. But until that happens, we're just going to proceed as normal. I love that breaking news sound effect. I hope that there's some very minor breaking news that we can play it for as well. Let's start off with something controversial. Let's get the people going right away. Kirk Cousins is 5 years into his Vikings tenure. Probably going to make it 6 unless there is a stunning trade that happens in the next month or so, or week, whatever it might be. Is Kirk Cousins the number 2 Vikings quarterback of all time? Because Fran Tarkenton is number 1 with a bullet. He's got all the records. He's got the Super Bowl appearances. He's got the longevity, the popularity. It's Fran. Fran's the man. Is Kirk number 2? Because if you look statistically, he will be number 2 in touchdown passes and yards if he plays out this season for the Vikings. Does that, in your minds, put him at a clear number 2 in Vikings history?
I mean, volumetrics have never meant anything to me. Obviously, there's a way that we could do rate metrics that require us to do era adjustments. I can look that up pretty easily while we're having this discussion. But I do want to say that the list, you're wrong about the whole thing. The list is Joe Cap, Teddy Bridgewater, Dante Culpepper, Brett Favre. Obviously, there's no question.
Yeah.
Joe
Well,
Webb.
no notes.
I would rather honestly have a conversation based on vibes than stats, because the stats tell a
Oh yeah,
clear
Joe
story.
Cap wins
Okay.
vibes easily.
Yeah, if we're doing vibes, Joe Cap is a Hall of Famer.
23, 12, and 3. 3 ties. He's a stud. Man.
My dude
3
got in a
ties.
fist fight at the age of 72 at an award ceremony for an award he was receiving with the other guy that was receiving that award.
Weren't they swinging their canes at each other?
Yeah, it was
Yes,
from a
and that's
beef,
like
30 years ago.
So
Like,
good.
1950s
It's incredible.
CFL beef,
Yeah, Joe Cap
like
kept
before
that
he was even a
alive.
Viking.
Yeah, so Joe Cap clearly by vibes number one, not even close.
Also,
So
Joe
I'm not,
Cap
I'm not a great
gave up
historian.
his career, and at the time, the biggest contract in the league. He was the highest paid player in the league, and he gave all of that up out of principle. That ended up in a lawsuit that basically was the impetus for the 1970s strike. You can thank Joe Cap in a sense for free agency looking the way it does now, and not still being like all restricted.
Wow, that's
Really
a great way to take it away from Reggie White. I approve.
I'll be honest.
He walked
I'm
so
not a
Reggie White
historian
could
like
run.
Ron.
This is 20 years before that.
Yeah, I love it.
Inman, what do you think about Joe Cap? Because honestly, Joe Cap means nothing to me as a coverer of the Vikings. Joe Cap wasn't on my vibes radar. There are others that I would put in front of Kirk Cousins. Joe Cap doesn't mean anything to me.
I had to pull the all-time Vikings quarterback list up. Joe Cap. They got him 13 on here. 67 to 69, 23, 12, and 3. Sam, I'm not going to lie. The stats are pretty good, but I would have to lean on Luke and Arif. Obviously know a little bit more about Cap and the background and the history. Sounds like this dude doesn't get enough love from the Vikings fan base.
I will be honest. He was not the world's best quarterback. If that's how we're judging-
era adjustments, Arif. Era adjustments.
It was
don't
big
worry
time
about
Case
that.
Keenum vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
Big time Case
yeah.
Keenum. Like how does he keep getting away with this kind of?
So, okay, let's do it this way. Who is more popular than Kirk Cousins? Who and this is a crazy exercise that the number 2 statistical Vikings quarterback in history, there's probably a long list, honestly, because the Vikings have had so many shooting stars that were one and dones, but they were awesome one and dones. So someone like Jeff George might actually have more admiration in the Vikings lifers than Kirk Cousins. Do you disagree?
Jeff George is a tough
he
one.
played for
but I
6
get it.
years. So like, if nobody else is except for Fran Tarkenton has been the Vikings quarterback for 6 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of course he's going to have, be second all time and this and that. But yeah, if you have 1-year wonders like Jeff George, 2-year guys like Favre or Bridgewater, 3-year guys like Cap, yeah, it's
Culpepper,
they're not going to have
5,
the
6
same volume
years.
stat.
Gus
Yeah.
for
Have to
10
look
and
at his
5. Wow. Okay, Gus. I see you.
In Gus we trust.
Let's go. Buzz.
They sold T-shirts at Dick's.
It's funny. I got these stats pulled up. Kirk and Culpepper played the same amount of games, 80 games right now as it stands today. Kind of a fun little comparison when you look back at stats. Honestly, I'm surprised because when we think back to Dante, we think back to those 5, 6 fun, magical years with Moss and Carter. You think about the deep ball, the high scoring offense, etc. And when people think Kirk, sometimes you think about the more conservative check down guy of the two anyways, but in the same amount of games played, Kirk's got 18 more TDs, 800 more yards, 36 less interceptions. Pretty wild. And the other thing, too, Dante was taking some sacks, man. Holy smokes. Almost 50 more sacks taken in the same amount of games. That's pretty wild. So,
what are the fumble stats? Because Dante had the small hands, right? And Kirk is also a fumble. Like, what do you have fumble comparison?
I don't see fumbles on here. Maybe a Reef or Luke could pull it up. I see Kirk's got Culpepper and adjusted yards, better quarterback rating, 4 more fourth quarter comebacks. So you stack all those up. Yeah, it's kind of tough. But again, you think the perception of Dante, I just thought that would have been a little bit closer. 36 more interceptions.
Do we want the? So I was able to
81 fumbles for Dante.
Wow.
81 fumbles. He led
with
the
the
league
interceptions. How many turnovers?
Oh my god!
Holy smokes!
81
Turnover
23
machine.
fumbles
That
in
sounds
2002.
insane.
Yeah. Okay. So I was able to pull up, and NEA does not include fumble, so that is important. But I was able to pull up the adjusted net yards per attempt index for every Vikings player that's thrown over 100 passes by season. I adjusted it for the number of attempts they had in each season, and I was able to produce a career number for the seasons where they threw at least 100 attempts. This includes everybody. So it includes the one-year wonders, it includes the 5-year guys, and it's their total career. So, for example, Favre's 2010 is included as well as his 2009. Any guesses as to the top 3 and era-adjusted net yards per attempt? Again, that does not include fumbles. That includes sacks, it includes interceptions, includes touchdowns.
Sam Bradford.
These are all Vikings QBs all time?
Yeah, and only in seasons where they threw at least 100 passes for the Vikings.
Cunningham?
That is number 1.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
No guesses
Can
as
you
to
read
2
the
or 3?
prompt again?
Well,
I'm trying to
said
think
Bradford.
outside the box here.
You didn't react when I said Bradford.
I was
so now I'm just
distracted.
combing through
Sam's
the
going to have
list.
to get
It's absolutely not Bradford.
I'm combing through the list here. Brad Johnson, Warren
Sam's going to
Moon.
have to get the sound effect ready. I got distracted by something. What was the prompt again?
Oh my gosh.
Check the
Okay.
chat, Sam.
Good Lord.
Check the chat.
No.
The-
Oh, okay. Yeah, so Sam, get the noise ready.
Okay.
No, the prompt is I looked through all of the era adjusted net yards per attempt for every single Vikings player who's thrown at least 100 passes in a single season for the Vikings, combined it into a career total, weighted it for the attempts that they had for each. So essentially, with some caveats, a career era adjusted net yards per attempt. Who are the top 3? Sam was able to get the number 1, which was Randall Cunningham.
I'm going to guess
Number 2.
Warren Moon.
Favre?
Nope, not Warren Moon. Favre is not in the top 5. Remember, this is career, so this includes 2009 and 2010.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
Gus.
Brad Johnson?
Definitely not Brad Johnson.
Okay.
Not Gus. Come on. Gus is 23 of 24.
Did we say Joe Cap?
No one said Joe Cap, but he is kind of higher on the list than you'd expect.
Is Kirk in the top 3?
Kirk is not in the top 3.
Man.
He's 5th behind some very interesting number. Tark is 3.
Okay. And it's minimum 100. Minimum what? 100 attempts.
Yep, minimum 100 attempts in a single.
Is there
season.
like a small sample size guy that sneaks?
Joe
in here?
Webb?
Yeah, it's a small sample size.
What
Guy's
about-
number 2.
Okay. Small sample size guy.
Case Keenum?
George.
Case Keenum is 4th,
Oh, Case
just ahead of
Keenum,
Kirk,
fun.
which is delicious.
Jeff
George. That is
George.
hilarious.
Yes.
Wow,
Jeff
Jeff
George.
George.
So
Really?
Jeff George.
It's Cunningham.
So
George,
98,
Tarkenton.
99, baby.
Let's go.
It's Cunningham, George, Tarkenton, Culpepper, Keenum, Cousins.
Say that list one more time. Say that ranking again.
Cunningham number 1,
Yep.
Jeff George number 2,
Okay.
Fran Tarkenton number 3,
Mm-hmm.
Dante Culpepper number 4, Case Keenum number 5, Kirk Cousins number 6.
Wow.
And just ahead of Brett Favre at number 8 is Sean Salisbury at 7.
Because why wouldn't he be? 92 to 94. 5-4 record. Gotta love him. Okay.
In total adjusted net yards, adjusted for era, it's not Kirk Cousins, it's not Fran Tarkenton, it's not Dante Culpepper. Cousins is 2nd, Tarkenton is 3rd, Culpepper is 4th. Who's number 1 in total adjusted net yards? Adjusted for era. 2-minute Tommy.
Tommy, of course. Tommy
Kramer.
Guns. 2-minute
Let's
Tommy,
go.
of course. Of
Kramer.
course. Of course.
All right.
Because this isn't going to ding him for
Right.
missing a bunch of games in a season. He just gets his 4 good
Exactly.
games and goes.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. It's fantastic. Anyway, my personal list
Yeah,
is
what do you got?
is Tarkenton, Culpepper, Favre, Cousins. The
Tarkenton,
highs count for
Culpepper,
more
Favre,
than the lows
Cousins.
count against.
Okay.
Culpepper had I guess he had 3 good years. 3 out of 5.
Three great years.
The reason Culpepper and Favre are high on the list is that, to me, it is more valuable to be at the top and you take something at the bottom than it is to be above average for 2 years. So I'd rather be a top 3 quarterback for 1 year and a bottom 3 quarterback the next year than it would be to be a number 8 quarterback for 2 years. Even though that number 8 quarterback
it goes to Sam's analogy about the shooting stars. You're right, Sam. You look at this list, a lot of shooting stars, hot and then cold. But the years that they were hot, really great years, really fun years.
Yeah,
so.
like Cunningham was benched after 6 games in 99, and then Jeff George comes in. What do you know? Jeff George is unbelievable. I want to get back into sort of legacy quarterbacks and whether Aaron Rodgers, if he continues mirroring his predecessor Brett Favre, whether or not Vikings fans would embrace him. But we've got some major breaking news to get to. We'll keep you in suspense about that. By the time people are listening, they probably already know. But I'll tell you that
what could it be?
FanDuel brings you today's show. The NHL, NBA seasons are coming down to the wire. March Madness is here. It's a perfect time to download the FanDuel app. Very easy to use. If you're a new customer, the No Sweat First Bet is a excellent risk-free way to make your first wager up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. So then your next bet allows you another chance. You can also stack your bets up in a same-game parlay, a chance at big payouts, get paid instantly after you win. You can bet in so many different creative ways on every sport imaginable. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get your no sweat first bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel. So we're going to switch to Ron Johnson. Please ignore the little logo. And whammy. Luke Braun, you called it out first. What is the breaking news?
Adam Schefter tweeted something that if you've been listening to Darren Wilson on Score North, you kind of already knew. He says there's a real possibility that the Vikings and Adam Thielen will part ways in the coming days, allowing the 2-time Pro Bowl wide receiver to become a free agent. The two sides will talk in coming days, but his time in Minnesota could be coming to an end. The whispers about this have been floating for a while, but that's the first real, like the most official word yet, I guess.
Luke, just real quick, I know you're just a savant with this cap stuff. If they cut him, is it just as simple as I'm looking, on Spot Rack that they take the dead money and then they save about what, 6-7-ish mil, something like that? Or does it matter when it happens, like the date?
Oh,
there's a
Luke,
couple
you gonna
of ways.
pull out the beans? Pull out the beans.
Yeah,
Give me the
pinto beans.
I have cooked most of the beans at this point, but I had to buy an obscene amount of beans for that. So I
didn't
have
actually
all
watch,
of the
so I have no
anymore.
idea what happened here.
I saw it on mute, unfortunately, when I was scrolling by. So I got the visual.
So they could post June him. That's the
Okay.
answer is that
beans.
if they wanted to, that would not save more money in the long term or anything like that. It would just split up the dead cap hit between this year and next year and sort of spread the pain out a little bit.
Okay.
And then they would save like 13.5 mil this year, but
is that
would
something that Thielen
like
would
7
put
mil in dead next year.
Got it.
And the
Okay.
Vikings
Is that something
have
that
the
Thielen would
option
push back on?
to do that.
Wouldn't affect Thielen at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
They did this with Kyle Rudolph.
Move.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
It's like when you convert guaranteed base salary into signing bonus, it's kind of the same thing, except you keep the player.
Yeah.
The player has the same amount of take-home pay. It does not affect their paycheck. It will, I guess, change whether or not they receive it in terms of a per-game salary versus all at once, depending on how they organize their signing bonus. But it does not change anything for the player. It changes things for the cap accounting-wise. Same thing here. The player will receive the same amount of money, will hit free agency the same way, will do it at the same time, which is important. But from an accounting perspective, it is as if the Vikings had cut this player after June 1st.
Got it. Very good. So they could either bite the bullet. Yeah, they could either bite the bullet, pay that whole dead, save about 6 this year, or chop it up, save about 12 this year, but just kick the can with that other 6 down the road to next year.
Right. And that
you already might have 12 and a
represents-
half dead with Cousins' void year. Like the Cousins void, if they let his contract expire, that's already a big chunk next year.
If they post June 1st Thielen, which I think teams only have one post June 1st designation. Otherwise, in order to accomplish that, they would have to. They have 2. Okay. Otherwise, in order to accomplish that, they would have to do it literally after June 1st. But if they post June 1st Thielen, it would, to me, softly suggest that they are working on a Kirk Cousins extension to prevent that. And I don't think it's a strong signal, but it is some kind of signal that they're working to prevent that void year from accelerating into 2024.
And I want to be abundantly clear that this dead money is money that the Vikings have already paid to Adam Thielen, but they have not accounted for against the salary cap. So it's like money they owe to the salary cap, but Thielen has already collected, for the most part, that money, unless he's doing a weird payout structure or something, which doesn't matter.
Happens.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So now, I think if fans are devastated, if we broke the news to you, we're sorry. If you're in tears, we're sorry.
I've never apologized for making this.
Yeah, well, you're a sociopath.
Yes.
There might be an out here if you're looking for a silver lining. That Schefter does say they're going to talk, and maybe this is Thielen's camp playing ultimate hardball and saying, hey, Schefter, we're done. Trying to get some traction in these talks, maybe trying to force the Vikings' hand a bit. The thing is, I don't think the Vikings are that desperate and are going to cave. I don't know if indeed they're in a log jam. I don't know if the Vikings are going to blink. If it was Rick Spielman, he'd blink. Rick Spielman couldn't stand losing guys. But this is a new era, and I don't think that they're going to resolve their issues if it's at this dire of a situation now. So we're already having the quarterback legacy talk today. I think let's hold off on the Adam Thielen legacy talk until it's official, because that's another fascinating one with this wide receiver rich franchise. This would be a big legacy loss for the Minnesota Vikings, but let's withhold that, I think, until we know more details. One question on this, though.
Any guesses if he's not returning to Minnesota, which team he's going to be playing for next year? Anybody want to throw out a guess?
Florida.
Got to be a
Florida team would make a lot of sense.
California.
Jets. He's gonna.
I thought about the Jets. That would be so funny. I thought about the Jets, but and while I do sometimes have the Jets drafting a receiver, okay. While I do sometimes have the Jets
made some cap for Adam Thielen, baby.
I don't really see a great fit, just because, with Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson, they've got a pretty good receiving core. Yeah, they could add another receiver and that would help out, but there's other teams that are going to be more desperate to add a wide receiver too, I think.
Right. The Florida teams, Tampa, does he really want to go to Tampa right now? Jacksonville, they're kind of set. They got 3 or 4 number 2 type of options. He could
immediately slot in as a wide receiver too there, I think. That is possible.
Okay. Miami, maybe? I don't know.
Probably in Jacksonville, Reef, what about Calvin Ridley?
Yeah. What about him?
I don't know.
Did Christian Kirk becomes the slot receiver? Calvin Ridley and Adam Thielen are on the outside. And Zay Jones stews or something. I don't know.
Jabal Agnew, Marvin Jones, no love here. What's going on? Evan Ingram, he's a free agent though.
Evan Ingram is a tight end. No, he's franchise.
Is he?
So maybe we anticipated this, but it seems like the contract is untradeable. Like they're not going to get a thing for Adam Thielen, which whoever would absorb that, what capologists help me out?
My understanding
taking on the same situation.
They would take on $13 million, right, Luke? Okay. That's not bad.
It's not horrible. He's going to want 8, 9, 10 anyways, right? Close to.
If that's all he wanted,
I think they would.
Surprised the Vikings wouldn't.
The team trading for him would have him at a rate of $5.5 million. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at last year. 13 mil.
Yeah, it's 13 million. Okay, yeah. That's not bad, but an asset plus the $13 million cap hit, I see why it's untradeable. In a vacuum, $13 million is fine, but Thielen has not demonstrated over the past year and a half of play that he is worth $13 million, and you can stomach an overpay to get a guy on your team, right? But an overpay plus a draft pick, like a fifth round draft
hard
pick,
to negotiate that.
Tough.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I wonder how the emergence of Hawkinson changed the thinking around Thielen. Because if they don't have Hawkinson, if all they have is Irv Smith and his expiring, I think there's a little more desperation. I think the Vikings have a little less leverage in this discussion, because then it would just be assuming that KJ Osborne can be a number 2. assuming that you'll figure out the tight end, however you do it. You wouldn't have any answers there. TJ Hawkinson might have been the end of Adam Thielen, honestly, because now you need to figure out his contract, need to account for that, and that's just a better business move. I mean, you want the younger player who's unique at his position. Adam Thielen is becoming increasingly less unique at the wide receiver position. I think it hurts, but I think it's good business for the Vikings.
Yeah. No, I think having multiple receiver options made it very easy. I shouldn't say very easy. Made it much easier, relatively speaking, to kind of play hardball with Thielen and force him to either address the fact that he's going to get a pay cut or get cut, period. Which I'm kind of curious about the offsets in his guaranteed money, whether or not he's going to be able to make money off the Vikings and whatever team signs him. But yeah, that's kind of academic.
BC Johnson comeback season, baby. Buckle
hey,
up.
Let's go.
Hey. Did they void it? Like I thought this was his.
I don't know.
I've heard that too, Luke.
His toll year?
Yeah, toll. Yeah, did they toll it?
Oh.
One more question. Ripple effect. Adam Thielen's gone. Does that mean KJ Osborne talks extension? I think this is a great time to extend him. Would be and probably a dumb time for KJ to extend. If he knows he's going to be the number 2.
They get to know how the draft goes. I think that's how it is. I think if they strike out on wide receivers, they take a corner and then they take a quarterback and a running back, and then they don't get a wide receiver that they can rely on as wide receiver 2, then I think you can. Then you go into camp and you are talking to Jefferson and you're talking to Osborne too. But they get to do the draft first. And if you do draft someone, if Jordan Addison 23, you slam it, and then I don't think you do it.
At least under the Spielman era, they always did that in the summer, right? I mean, more times than not, they would restructure or extend guys in the summer, like
free agency in the summer.
Yeah, Sam, I guess you're right. Maybe not a wise thing for KJ to do at this point, knowing he's getting an expanded role coming up as that wide receiver 2 in the system. I wonder what a contract extension might look like for a guy like that.
With knowing what we know now with his previous 2 years of stats, I think they would probably offer in the 8 to 10 range.
Oh, I said 7. Okay,
7? 8 to 10 seems spicy. Yeah.
Well,
6,
he just
7?
Saved a man from a burning car. I mean, if you negotiated today, he could lean on that on his resume.
That's fair.
But stuff's moving, guys. It's happening. I don't think it's done happening yet either. You've saved 9. Now you've saved 6 potentially with Thielen. You still got a ways to go to even be cap compliant. So that will continue. We'll keep an eye on that, and hopefully we get to play. I got to do it one more time. Our breaking news sounder. Coming up, we discuss whether Vikings fans would embrace Aaron Rodgers if he found his way, a la Favre, to Minnesota. We thank you for listening to the Minnesota Football Party as your first listen today. Make sure to check out Locked On Sports today. The biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Locked On Sports today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
Start the clock. It's time to execute the 4-minute drill.
Rodgers is Favre. He might be going to New York, which means he might be coming to Minnesota, and it works out perfectly. Kirk Cousins expiring contract. Maybe things don't go great for Aaron Rodgers in New York. I don't know how it works out contractually there, but let's say he comes to Minnesota, guys. I think Vikings fans almost universally wrapped their arms around Favre and said, hey, buddy, Green Bay didn't want you. We'll take you. We will make this as painful for Green Bay as possible. Would it happen the same way if Aaron Rodgers came to Minnesota? A little 4-minute drill action. Let's start with Luke Inman. What do you think about A-Rod coming to Minnesota in 2 years?
Gosh, I flash back to that Favre era, and I remember a lot of the allure around Favre was like a well-known fact. Vikings built the Super Bowl roster. The window was kind of closing. They were just one piece away, obviously. That was that quarterback. In between all the dramatics all summer, will they or won't they? You get the helicopter footage of Longwell and Hutch going down to Mississippi to recruit them. It was like the top story of the summer. Every time you clicked on ESPN, you got 24/7 coverage going on. It was like watching the OJ Bronco chase or something. You couldn't get enough of it. And then lastly, too, you knew Favre could still play, though, at that point. Like, you saw him just light it up with the Jets for 10 weeks or so in New York before he got injured. Stats were good, had the 8-3 record. So it kind of really sucked everyone in. So I think, not all of it, but some of it certainly depends on if the Vikings roster at the time is truly just one piece away like it was with Favre. And then also how much time passes in between Rodgers playing in Green Bay to Minnesota. Where's his level of play at? As far as the fan reaction goes, I really think at the end of the day, honestly, if they jump up drastically in their Super Bowl odds at that point, then it might not matter who's under center as long as fans feel like this guy now is going to give them a better chance to win it all than whoever was before him. But obviously there's going to be some fans who just absolutely hate it for a variety of reasons, because it is tough to root for someone for so long, so passionately, and then all of a sudden ask them to flip a switch and do a 180. But I think the excitement, the drama, if nothing else, would be highly, highly entertaining, Sam. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, Arif.
A couple of things here. One, fans did not embrace Favre until Favre to Lewis against San Francisco. I feel
Week 4?
Yeah.
Week 3.
Week 3.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't need to correct that.
No, don't apologize. I should know that. You're right. I should know that. That's on me.
I think that plays a like, we should remember that fact, because he doesn't show up to training camp. He shows up right before the season, first 2 games or whatever, and then the Favre to Lewis happens, and I think fans begin to embrace him because of that moment. So that moment is really critical. If that moment never happens for Rodgers, he's never embraced. They're going to wait until he does something. But there are, I think, additional barriers in the way between Rodgers and the fan base than there are between Favre and the fan base, which is that Rodgers is more accessible. He shows up on podcasts more often. His press conferences are shared on Twitter, right? And he is more annoying. Like, I don't know how else to put it. He is just more annoying. He is a little bit, they're both very arrogant, don't get me wrong. But like, he is very presently arrogant in a way that he kind of embraces. He smirks after games. He's drinking like literally purple Gatorade after beating the Vikings, and kind of like, he's a guy that like likes to play up these things. Like, he told the Bears, "I own you." Favre doesn't do that. Again, Favre, I'm on the record, bad guy. Don't like him. That's not the point I'm making. The point is rather that Aaron Rodgers needles people. He needles fan bases, and he enjoys it, and that's fine, right? But it makes it more difficult if he comes over to kind of accept that, and maybe if he, trash talks Green Bay on the way in, which seems like he's got that in his holster right now, maybe that would help. But he's kind of a weirdo, right? Like, Favre at least wasn't a weirdo. Again, bad guy. I don't like him, but he was not like a weirdo. He was fun. He was like kind of a hick. He did like some stuff that was like, oh, wow, this kind of redneck is saying redneck stuff in the huddle. This mic'd up stuff is pretty fun. Rodgers is a weirdo, man. So I think there's more barriers because he's very obviously arrogant. He's more accessible. He seems to enjoy trashing other fan bases. And he would have to do kind of a 180. I guess it wouldn't be that much of a 180. More of like a 90. He'd have to do a 90 and start verbally trash talking Green Bay on the way in.
The weirdo Rodgers stuff got exposed during his career, whereas bad guy Favre was more post-career. That a 2010 Jen Sturger, that too.
Yeah. Except for the Jen Sturger stuff, yeah, absolutely.
Right. Week 1, you're right. Week 1 at Cleveland on the road. Didn't really need to do much. 1 touchdown, only threw 21 passes. Week 2 at Detroit. Had to come back from 10. But again, still not a lot of magic. And then you're right. San Fran, Favre to Lewis. And then the next week was the Green Bay Packer week when he went off as well, 3 touchdowns and interceptions.
So he was so good against the Packers both games. So good.
Oh,
that helped.
Braun.
Yeah.
So I think to a certain point, like most fans, the majority of fans, once you're a Viking, especially if it's a situation where Aaron Rodgers is doing this to spite the Packers, which it would have to be, much like Favre was. And I think that won over a lot of Vikings fans where it's like, you're because you hate him. Yeah, we hate him too. We have that in common. But there will always be holdouts. I remember, and you can ask Matt Anderson, who does Climbing the Pocket work now. He and I went to high school together, senior year econ class. We had a friend who never embraced Favre the whole time. She never did it.
Wow.
She's like, he's a traitor. I don't trust him. I don't like his integrity, and just never did it. So I guess there will always be holdouts. My concern in this situation with Rodgers would be What went wrong with the Jets, buddy? Why are we buying into this? I would be particularly concerned. But I think fans it would take one win against the Packers, and I think a lot of fans would embrace him, like Arif said, if there was any dig at the Packers, which of course he would. He would not be respectful in that situation at all. And I think a lot of Vikings fans would appreciate it.
I think the messier the divorce with Green Bay, the more likely that the Vikings would say, hey, we want to be your rebound. We want to help you recover from this. Because it got very messy with Favre and the Packers, and it's getting messy with Rodgers and the Packers.
We want to be your rebound.
Let's bring in our guest of honor. It's Ron Johnson, Sam Inman, Hassan, Ron, and Braun. Ron Johnson's the host of the Ron Johnson Show, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and the Roundtables on Friday. He's on Twitter at 3RonJohnson. Ron, we were just debating the following. If Aaron Rodgers continues the Favre parallel and spends a year with the Jets, and then for whatever reason he pivots to Minnesota, would fans embrace Aaron Rodgers kind of the way they embraced Brett Favre?
Hell no. Hell no. 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 You don't even want that to happen. One, that's going to prove to all the tinfoil hatters that this world is on a simulation, and that the creators of the world are bored, and so we're just reliving the same 2009 simulation. And so no, nobody wants that. Nobody wants Aaron Rodgers in Minnesota. We don't need that. We have enough dark rooms and dark places. We don't need him to bring the darkness to us. No, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. No.
Hey, Sam put together an analogy that I thought was really fitting for you coming onto the show, which was because you love these kinds of analogies specifically, and I think that you can flesh it out, which was that the messier the divorce between Rodgers and the Packers, the more the Vikings would want to be, and the more the Vikings fan base would want to be the rebound chick.
No, that's toxic. That's toxic.
Yes,
fans are toxic.
Fans are toxic.
Fans are
the
toxic.
Toxicity is what makes it fun.
It was a great rebound with Brett Favre. It was great, but then we asked him to move in with us, and then it got weird, uncomfortable.
All we're figuring out is not whether or not it's a good idea. It's a toxic relationship,
darkness,
right? It's not a good idea.
My old friend.
But people love toxic.
We don't need that.
You know this, Ron. Yeah. People love toxic.
Yeah, no, we don't need that.
People are addicted to crazy.
Every time I hear Aaron Rodgers now, I just imagine the Dave Chappelle skit with Charlie Murphy and what's his name? Rick James. When he's like, darkness, everybody. No, we don't need Aaron Rodgers. This is one thing I will say. So the Packers' relationship with Aaron Rodgers, if it does end in a bitter kind of ending, because Brett Favre, I don't feel like was messy. Brett Favre was more messy because of Aaron Rodgers, because Brett Favre could do whatever he wanted. He can come back, he could leave, he can come back, he could leave. And Rodgers dude, just go. I'm ready. I don't feel like Jordan Love has that. Jordan Love's please don't go. I don't want this. I don't want to be a starter. I don't want people to see me actually throw the ball 45 times a game. I don't want that. Please don't go. Where Rodgers was opposite. Rodgers was like, man, go on. I got this. I'm ready for this. And so when you look at what Aaron Rodgers has done for the Packers organization, you look at the comments he's made about, he owns the Bears and how Anthony Barr was dirty with the Vikings. I just don't see that ever being I don't ever feel like Brett Favre and the Vikings truly had bad blood, where it truly feels like Rodgers hates the Bears and the Vikings. I don't think he cares about the Lions, except maybe now because they ended his season, and Dan Campbell is a polarizing coach. But I don't truly believe that he has that. It's not that same I can go play anywhere, where the Vikings fans are happy to get Brett Favre. I don't feel like Aaron Rodgers, the way this team is slated, I don't feel like, and that's maybe just me, I don't feel like Aaron Rodgers is the answer, because he doesn't always play on cue. And when I say that, I mean, I feel like Kevin O'Connell's offense is kind of an on-cue offense. You have to get the ball out of your hand at a certain point. You have to do this. And we had Joker Phillips on the Ron Johnson Show, former Gophers coach, head coach at Kentucky, now receivers coach at North Carolina State. And he talked about guys like Justin Jefferson and what kind of quarterback they need. And I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is that guy. And somebody brought up a good point too. Aaron Rodgers, this is the thing about Aaron Rodgers. Whatever team he goes to, he brings a ton of baggage. And when you think about Minnesota, we already have kicker baggage. We don't need additional baggage bought to me. Like Deion Sanders shows up with his own luggage and his Louis. Aaron Rodgers showed up with his own luggage and it's black garbage bags. Like, you don't want that. Like, you don't know if you need to put it on the curb. You don't know if you need to open it. You don't know if that belongs in the basement, in the kitchen, because he doesn't label his luggage. Like, he just shows
he expects
up.
you to put it away.
Exactly. And if you think about him missing OTAs, missing training camp, you don't want your guys to feel like, oh, this is operational. This is what we'll do. This is how we need to work. You want a guy in Minnesota like a Kirk Cousins who's a workman mentality, shows up with his briefcase every day. Not saying Aaron Rodgers is not that guy. I don't feel like he's that guy anymore. I feel like when you've made over $300 million, a lot of the basic stuff, like of life, even like it's not there anymore, and so I just don't feel like that would be it. But a messy divorce for the Packers, I just think it's just fun to watch. But I definitely don't want the Vikings to be that side chick. Like, you don't need to be the other chick. I think it's time to like solidify if you're going to stick with Kirk Cousins for 2 or 3 more years, and then try to go find, whether it is a Trey Lance, whether it is an Anthony Richardson, find that quarterback of the future.
Well, I really like the point you made about the $300 million, because the corollary to that point is that Kirk Cousins has made a very workmanlike $150 million, and he shows up to work every day. He's grounded. Sorry, Ron.
Ron, you just mentioned right at the end there, Stroud and Richardson, I think. And I know the draft's still 49 days away or so, but I'm wondering, just from what you've seen from these top 4 quarterbacks in the class, I know it's early, Young, Stroud, Levis, Richardson, who obviously just tore up the combine. Where do you have these guys ranked, or what's something that just really sticks out to you when you look at this group as a whole? And then I guess, too, does any of them entice you enough to warrant the Vikings moving all the way up into the top 5, where you'd probably have to get to draft one of these guys? Or are you more in the camp, just stay put, maybe grab a guy like Hendon Hooker instead?
I feel like Will Levis has 2 sides to him. He's either going to be like an early Mitchell Trubisky, or an early, kind of like, or he's just going to flat out just be a Brock Purdy. Sorry. So he can either, be a Mitchell Trubisky, like early, like, oh man, this is the guy. And then you're like, wait, no, this is not the guy. Or Brock Purdy, where it's like he gets into a situation and then you find out like he's better than we thought he was. And again, that's why you just don't know. With CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and Anderson, I feel like those are quarterbacks that have to go to a system that works for them. And this is the problem. And I forgot who we had on our show, Sam, but it was the days of the quarterback going to an organization and you say, hey, look, this is my offense. You need to run it. I hope that's gone, because the more you say, this is my offense, you have to run it, you're missing out on elite talent. Like, you're missing out on top guys, where a guy like CJ Stroud can come in, he can move in the pocket, he can run if he has to, but he can throw the ball. And I think that's going to be the key for a guy like that secondary play in the NFL. We talk about that so much, where if you don't have a QB spy, guys like Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, they're hurting you on that secondary play, whether they, scramble for 15 to 20 yards, or they scramble, they run around and they hit a wide open guy because they've had extra additional time for that guy to run around and Tyreek Hill video game it. That's going to be the key when you're looking at like a Hendon Hooker. Like, how well does he come off that knee injury? How confident can he play on it? And then when do you even get him back? And for a third, round pick, second round pick, and the Vikings don't have a second round pick, I think he's a very solid pick there for a lot of teams that are like, look, we can bring this guy in. He can sit there and wait, and then he can come in and eventually just play. And I think the Seattle Seahawks are probably going to want to take him in the late round or second day, because he is the exact same size as Geno Smith. And if you see what Geno Smith can do in that offense, you literally have your quarterback in waiting, where you let Geno play for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 more years. Hooker can, be a backup behind him. He can learn from him. I just don't feel like the Vikings have the capital the way the Seahawks do to be able to do that. Now, again, Kevin O'Connell, we really don't know Kevin O'Connell. We don't know what he inherited this team from Mike Zimmer, and he's just running with it. So we maybe will get a look at it this year as we figure out, like, are they going to keep an extra running back? Are they going to get rid of a running back? Are they going to get rid of a receiver? Like, what is this? Are they going to bring in another tight end and go 2 to 3 tight ends like the 49ers? We'll see, but we really don't truly know because, again, he inherited this team, turned into a 13-4 team, and now we get to kind of see him put his fingerprints on it. But until then, that's my thoughts on those quarterbacks. I think Bryce Young at 5'10", he's small, and he reminds me, I hate to say it, it's like a Kyler Murray effect. But not as fast. And so maybe because he didn't rely on his legs like Kyler Murray did, maybe he will have a better chance at it. But both are Heisman winners, both undersized. Could you put him in the Drew Brees category of throwing? Maybe. But again, it depends on the team he ends up with.
Who's your favorite? Got to pick one. You get your pick of the litter. Top dot right now. 7 weeks till the draft, I know, but right now.
So I'm a huge Cam Newton fan. I've always been a fan of Cam Newton's game. So that's why I like Richardson, because I feel like he's young. You're drafting him not on production. You're drafting him on future talent. And so that's why I feel like I don't know if he'll go in top 10. Like, unless again, it only takes one team to fall in love with you. And that's what everybody keeps saying. So maybe one team falls in love with him. But if it doesn't and he drops, it's like the movie Draft Day. One person passes on him that everybody thought was going to take him, you'll keep dropping. Like Aaron Rodgers. You know what I mean? Same thing. When you don't go to where everybody thought, and all these other teams didn't even think they can get you, unless you're Justin Jefferson, like teams aren't going to say, oh, crap, let's go get him. Like it's one of those things where they're like, wait, what do they know about Anthony Richardson? We don't know. Why didn't they take him? Why did the Colts pass on him? And why did this team take Will Levis over Anthony Richardson? You know what I mean? Like that's going to come up. And then when that happens, he could fall to a team like the Vikings at 23. And I do love him because of the Cam Newton effect of like Cam Newton in the RPO offense, in the flat out throwing offense, and then his ability to do Jalen Hurts things and run the ball, run QB sweeps. Like he's an additional running back in the backfield. We saw how Jalen Hurts really hurt a lot of teams, specifically the Vikings. It's not a bad idea to have a quarterback that's a running back. You don't have to pay for a running back, and you still have a guy that can throw the crap out the ball and sling it. And that's what you get. When you got a guy that can spin that ball and you got receivers like Justin Jefferson, you're going to probably keep Adam Thielen. You got TJ Hawkinson, who you probably need to figure out how to keep long-term. And then you either, whether it's Irv Smith or an additional tight end you bring in, that's where you can really make hay and say, hey, look, we are going to utilize this guy's size, his speed, his ability. He'll be able to watch and learn and grow under Kirk Cousins for 2 or 3 years. And then you can just move on from Kirk Cousins and put Anthony Richards in, and he's not thrown into the wolves as a rookie. You can wait till he's 23, 24, and the game's kind of caught up to him, and he's learned it.
No, a lot of good points. He's probably the most polarizing prospect now after that combine. Just a huge wild card. And you're right, it only takes one team to fall in love. Could go as high as, 6 to the Lions even at this point, but you never know.
I mean, I just mocked him at number 2. I don't think he'll go there, but I just kind of wanted to play around.
I wouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, there's talks about number 1 overall now because of what Ron said, the potential. You're getting a Cam Newton, Dante Culpepper type of athlete. You got to mold him. You got to do all the
Cam
work.
Newton in the same sentence. Culpepper is not. Don't ever do that to my guy Cam Newton. I love Culpepper. That's my boy, but he was not Cam Newton.
Come on, Ryan.
He could throw the crap out the ball. Cam Newton was a different beast.
No, fumbled 81 times we looked up today. 81 fumbles for Dante. Fumbles.
I'll say this. I'll say these 2 things about it. One, I think that there's a difference between an elite athlete and a one-of-one athlete, and you pay for that marginal difference regardless of the position because it's a sport at the end of the day, and it's good to be athletic. And so being one of the best athletes in the history of the NFL at the quarterback position is better than being one of the best athletes at the quarterback position, right? And I think that boosts your value in a pretty significant way. Luke and I were talking about this on Twitter, and the analogy I said was, hey, if you see a deep threat in the draft and he's 180 pounds and he runs a 4.35, that's great. He's exactly who you thought he was. That's kind of you're pinning him where you already graded him. If that guy actually ran a 4.27 at 195 pounds, you're moving that guy up your board. Like you already knew he was a deep threat, but that is rare talent that you move it. You pay for margins in the NFL.
Yeah.
So that's
looking for that edge.
Thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I will say, and the one thing about that though too, and I've talked to a couple of scouts now, talked to a couple of coaches, NFL and college. Be very careful with that number. So 4.32 and 4.27, 0.05 seconds in track draft. Like it's like, man, that dude's moving. In football, the biggest difference is can he play? I just heard Terrell Owens on FaceTime with Deion Sanders. And the one thing Terrell Owens said to Deion Sanders was, I'm faster than people thought. Like, he didn't ever show people how fast he was until he started running track, and people were like, man, this Terrell Owens dude is actually fast. But he didn't play the game fast. He played the game at a speed where he's like, you're not going to figure out whether I'm going deep, whether I'm running a short route, whatever. And I think a lot of teams like Henry Ruggs, whether he was going to be on the field or not, I think that was the worst pick ever by the Raiders, because you went off speed alone and you had the quarterback, he was not Tyreek Hill. And I think that's what teams are looking for, is how do I get a Tyreek Hill in this draft? They screwed it all up. Like, if you can go back, you go CeeDee Lamb probably, or Jerry Jeudy first, then CeeDee Lamb, then Justin Jefferson, and then you probably go Henry Ruggs. But again, that is what it is.
Not Jalen Reagor? No. No, my point was, if it's like the same, if you scout a guy, it's the same guy and he runs the 4.35 versus the 4, it was more about after you've scouted a guy, kind of where he lands as an elite athlete. The second point I wanted to make is all of the young quarterbacks that we're excited about, except for 2, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow. All of the other ones, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, all Lamar Jackson, right? All of these guys that we're excited about as being kind of the next wave of potentially elite quarterbacks that are in that conversation of being franchise guys. All of them, except for Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence, were upside picks. They were not complete passers. Josh Allen was not a complete passer when he was drafted. And I think that might trick teams into overpaying for potential, but I think that is kind of the direction that a lot of these teams can go in. Like, hey, do I trust my coaching staff? If I don't, what are they doing? I'm going to fire them. If I do, why wouldn't I grab a guy that I would have the opportunity to develop? Because if I develop like Tanner McKee correctly, right? If I develop the 6'6", 240-pound guy that can't run, if I develop him correctly, where do I end up? Okay, now if I develop Anthony Richardson correctly, where do I end up? And that second answer is a lot more appealing.
Yeah, and I think it's about the coach. And again, we know Kevin O'Connell. He's a quarterback guru, former quarterback, so he definitely knows how to sit down with the quarterback. And honestly, if this was Mike Zimmer, I'm saying go corner, because we know Mike Zimmer is going to coach the crap out of corners. He's going to turn, subpar corners into great corners. He's going to turn terrible corners into good corners, because he knows how to coach that position. I mean, watch, you hear Deion Sanders talk about Zim and how great he is. When you talk about quarterback, that was not his thing. Like, he was never that guy. He was never going to sit down and create what Belichick can do. Belichick was able to say, look, I'm a defensive coordinator, but I know how to sit down and mentally talk to a quarterback and get Tom Brady on my side. That was not Zim, but Kevin O'Connell, yes. And so I totally agree. Like, I think Kevin O'Connell's a guy you can get with a guy like Anthony Richardson, and he can probably make him a Cam Newton in the next 4 years, sitting behind Kirk, being able to be a true backup. And also, too, because this is one thing Vikings fans always hold their breath. When Kirk takes a big hit, when he gets hit in the helmet, when he, has to move his, his chin straps in his ear and he has to pull it and he's getting up slow, everybody's like, ah. But with Anthony Richardson, you would say, oh, you know what? If Kirk gets hurt, at least we know we got somebody that can come in and probably be sustainable and win some games. I think that's the other side of it. But at the end of the day, there's other holes that the Vikings have to fill. There's other defensive holes they have to fill, and who knows? Like, but I'd say if they do end up, if he falls to him and they take him, then you can kind of see what Kwesi's trying to do. This is not about winning a Super Bowl in our second year. This is about 5 years from now. We want to be one of the best teams in the NFL, because Aaron Rodgers is going to be done. Derek Carr is probably going to be on his way out the door. Pat Mahomes will be older. Like, you're going to have this new wave of quarterback, and it's going to be who took the best one. Like, who took, like, Trevor Lawrence is going to be the guy. Herbert's going to be the guy. Burrow's going to be the guy. Allen's going to be the guy. But who took this class? Like, who's the guy? Because there's always one. Brock Purdy is probably going to be a Tom Brady type. Like, he's going to probably, if he stays with the 49ers, he's going to be a guy that, years from now, we're like, man, that was a great pick by the 49ers, and how they got him late. But when you're thinking about developing a player, yeah, that's the key, is who can develop them. What do you see in them? Those meetings they have in that room. I think that's the other big part of this. When you sit down and meet with that guy, and Joker Phillips kind of told us what he tells his guys when they're meeting, you want to flip that scout or that coach over. You want to actually talk to them and say, hey, tell me about your offense. Tell me about, are you a zone or a gap scheme? Tell me, are you a vertical threat, offense? Are you a RPO fast pace? Are you a horizontal? Like, what are your thoughts on your offense? So I can tell you how I fit into that. And so I think that's the other key too. Does that rookie command the room? Because when you talked about capital, this is the one analogy I have for that. Football draft picks early are like lottery picks. Who's not going to spend, $5 to $10 to $15 on a lottery, knowing you have a chance to potentially win $20 million, or knowing you have a chance to win $2 billion, like that dude out of California? It's one of those things. And so the NBA draft, like the Pistons right now are slated to get Wembanyama. And so Victor is possibly going to the Pistons. That's the same thing as Chet Holmgren. You really just don't know. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. You're picking this person, hoping the future's bright. You're hoping you're going to get the next LeBron James or the Michael Jordan, but you really don't know.
30 seconds here, Ron, because we're running late. Adam Thielen rumored to be out of Minnesota per Adam Schefter. Quickly, your thoughts.
Another tough one. Again, rumored, but Adam Schefter usually has insiders. We know that he has, I think he probably has an Alexa or some type of Siri device in every facility or something. Like, something's going on where Adam Schefter's I've watched Wakanda, so I don't know if anybody's seen Black Panther, but they have these little beads, the Koyo beads, and they stick them on people, and they can listen in on every conversation. I feel like Adam Schefter's been to Wakanda. Like, he stuck beads on every GM and coach in the NFL, and he has like a listening device of like 32 rooms on his tablet. He could just hit a button and let me see what the Vikings are talking about. Oh, what? They're not going to sign Adam Thielen? And then he tweets it out. Adam Thielen rumored to not, be a Viking because the Vikings can't afford him. How'd you know that, Adam? Like, how'd you really know that? And how much did you pay that source? Like, I know there's somebody he's paying to give him that info, but sad because Adam Thielen, like I said, 2014, I think is when he got to the Minnesota Vikings, or 13, one of those two. Yep. That was one of the early years of me doing the fan line. Yeah, because 13 he was on practice squad, and then 14. Yep. So being at TCF Bank Stadium, watching him get a pump block, doing Vikings Game Day Live, Vikings fan line, and then Vikings Live is what it was called back then before we actually had US Bank Stadium. Like I said, I've grown up in this career with Adam Thielen, with Eric Kendrick, with Stephon Diggs, with Anthony Barr. So it's one of those things where you're like, man, you see these guys go. But again, it's part of the business. I actually text and talk with him, and I can reach out to his wife if I have something going on. And so just that little stuff, the stuff he does with the community, the AT19 stuff he does with Unreal. From a community standpoint, it's tough. But at the end of the day, KJ Osborne did prove he's wide receiver 2. Like, he proved he deserved that opportunity to be wide receiver 2. He's faster probably at this point in his career than Adam Thielen is at his age. And so, and again, for the Vikings, they're like, look, we got to get your number down to this amount. And if you're not willing to do it because you feel like another team's going to do it, and if we cut you, we still got to pay you this. So, Adam has the ball in his court. So my guess is he's like, look, no, I'm not playing this game with you guys. And of course his agent, nobody ever makes a move unless they know. Like, dudes or women don't break up. And speaking of sliding in people's DMs and side chicks and all that, people don't break up without like a potential thought of like who else they could be with. And so there is that inkling of like, well, I know this team would take me right
That's
now.
A wild take.
I am nowhere near that take, man.
I know the Jets know, I know Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets. The Jets just cut the one dude, the other number 10, the other white receiver, so they need another white receiver. So we're going to go get Adam Thielen, because the Jets got to get a receiver.
Fill the quota.
Like, we know that. The Jets got to get another receiver. And so we were talking about, is it DeAndre Hopkins? Is it this person? Like, maybe they go get Aaron Rodgers and Adam Thielen because we know they secretly have been talking to each other before playing golf. So who knows? Like, you don't ever make a move, though, without having a backup. Like, people don't just become free agents. Like, you can get cut and have nothing, but you don't just walk away from a potential contract dispute without having some type of like, well, I know these 4 teams. Just like, the day the Ravens say they don't want, they're going to franchise 5 teams. Oh, we're out. We don't want them. Like, come on now. There's no way you don't know that if that hasn't happened.
Yeah. That's interesting. More from Ron Johnson on this, I assume, tomorrow on the round table. There's also tweeting about a possible Dalvin Cook trade offer. That might be on the table tomorrow for the round table as well. Ron Johnson, at 3Ron Johnson on Twitter, host of the Ron Johnson Show. Thanks, Ron. Excellent
Appreciate
stuff
it.
as always.
Thank you.
In closing, XFL parlays. No winners last week. No harm, no foul. Let's try again this week. The first selector is Luke Braun. What do you got?
I have to pull up the odds because I forgot we were doing this.
Yeah. Wow. Same here. Crazy.
Yep. There it is.
I'm definitely not doing the same
right,
exact thing, guys. Definitely not. Okay. FanDuel.
Look at these over-unders. We got 2 over-unders above 40.
Get out.
The XFL's starting to score.
Explosive. Yeah.
Roughnecks -9 against the Guardians. My 2 principles have become bet on the Roughnecks or bet against the Guardians. So I'll take that. And I will parlay it with Renegades Battlehawks over 36.5. I think the Battlehawks have sneaky one of the better offenses in the XFL. That's a really interesting over.
They've got the only NFL quarterback.
Yeah, that's like the main reason. If you combine those 2, you get plus 264.
All right, so you took Roughnecks and Battlehawks, or you took the Roughnecks and then
I took
in over that
and the
involves
Battlehawks Renegades over.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
The last thing.
Yeah, so I'm going to take – I just think that a 9-point spread in the XFL is insane. So I'm actually going to bet against my Roughnecks. I'm going to take the other side of that, Guardians +9.
That would be a wild outcome because the Guardians have been genuinely hilarious. Rife with
the Guardians losing by
and
8
the Roughnecks look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
don't
fair, like that number.
The Guardians week 3, it seems like they've plugged the leak. The rat's gone. So, and then they only lost by 1. So maybe they're a little bit better than we thought from the first 2 weeks, but the Roughnecks have been making short work of everyone.
Yeah. And, I had a good run with the Roughnecks and Phillips, but I'm switching my loyalties to the Guardians. And I'm also going to take the other underdog, the Renegades, because the Battlehawks have been winning at an unsustainable pace with 3-point conversions and 4th and 15 conversions. And I'm not a believer. So Renegades, Guardians, underdog parlay. All right, Luke Inman.
All right, give me the Defenders are still out there.
They are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, give me the Defenders by 6, and then give me.
That's a
Oh,
good
sorry. Did you want that one?
Yeah, I wanted that one.
I'll sell it to you. How much?
Oh, come on. Get out of here.
All right, and then give me. Let's see. Give me the under on that Guardians Roughnecks game. Lock it in. 264.
Plus 264?
I'm assuming. Love it.
Yep.
Easy.
It's all minus
What is this,
110 bets.
Eerily. Oh, okay. That's why.
All right. Well, no one took the Battlehawks, which is strange to me. So I'm doing that. That feels correct. So Battlehawks -4. And then has Ben DiNucci been benched yet? Do you know, Luke? Is he still playing?
I think they're still rotating.
Yeah. Okay. So he's
Seattle a
still
little
gonna. Okay. Yeah. Then the Sea Dragons -4.5. I got to keep up the bit.
Yeah.
To be clear, the DiNucci.
The
bit,
Sea Dragons.
not any other.
Yeah, just the one, right?
Yeah,
it's not a
just the
package
one.
deal of bits at all.
No, you can't.
The
Can't
Sea
back
Dragons
the
are
bit.
like, they're so frustrating. Like, it's like watching a 2021 Vikings game all the time with them. It's so bad. They do so many bozo things. They get a lead, then they blow it. It's
the
All
Kevin
right.
Clark tweet. The Sea Dragons have never played a normal game.
yeah. But their opponents do, and then they just lose.
Are the odds 264?
Yeah, 264.
Okay. Very good. All right. So we reacted to the Thielen news. We talked about Kirk Cousins' legacy, some big meaty issues on today's football party. We'll be back on Monday to talk about, I'm sure, more big Vikings news. For Arif, for Luke, I'm Sam Ekstrom. Big thanks to Ron Johnson as well. Comment down below. Where does Kirk Cousins rank in all-time Vikings quarterbacks? In popularity, overall stats? What do you think? Let us know on Locked On Sports Minnesota. We'll talk to you after the weekend on the Minnesota Football Party.